Good morning, everyone. I want you to think about the last time you lost your cool. Maybe it was in traffic, in a meeting where someone took credit for your work, or during that moment when your kid said, "Mom, I need 48 cupcakes by tomorrow morning." We've all been there. And let's be real, staying calm in those moments, it feels impossible. Because when our brains sense a threat, whether it's a speeding car cutting us off or an email that sounds just a little passive aggressive, our nervous system lights up like a Christmas tree. But here's the thing. Staying calm isn't about shutting down your emotions. It's about training your mind to respond instead of react. It's about getting comfortable with discomfort. And the good news? This is a skill. And like any skill, it can be strengthened. Our emotions are powerful. They can shape the way we see the world, influence our decisions, and even dictate how we interact with others. But here's what's really interesting. When we're overwhelmed, stressed, or angry, our emotions aren't just something we feel. They take over our nervous system. Our body literally prepares for battle. Our heart rate spikes, our breathing gets shallow, and our rational brain, the part that makes good decisions, starts to shut down. In that moment, we're not thinking logically. We're in survival mode. That's why we say things we don't mean, send emails we later regret, or make decisions that don't align with our values. But neuroscience gives us a powerful tool. When we name what we're feeling, when we say, "I am anxious, I am overwhelmed, I feel out of control," we actually start to calm our nervous system. Simply labeling an emotion decreases the intensity of that emotion. It sounds simple, but it's incredibly effective. Think about the last time you were really stressed. Maybe you were running late for an important meeting, or maybe someone said something that made you feel small. What was your first reaction? If you're like most of us, you probably either bottled it up or lashed out in some way. But what if instead you had paused and said, "I feel frustrated. I feel dismissed. I feel rushed." That small moment of self-awareness is like pressing the brakes on a speeding car. It doesn't make the stress go away, but it slows things down enough for you to take control. Research shows that when we put words to what we're feeling, we engage the part of the brain responsible for reasoning and decision-making. We shift out of reactivity and into a state of clarity. But here's the tricky part. Most of us aren't very good at identifying our emotions. We use vague catch-all phrases like "I'm just stressed" or "I'm fine," when in reality, we might be feeling something much deeper. Maybe we're afraid of disappointing someone. Maybe we feel unseen. Maybe we're carrying resentment. The more specific we can be, the more effective this strategy becomes. Instead of just saying, "I'm stressed," try digging deeper. Are you feeling overwhelmed, powerless, angry, lonely? The more accurately we name our emotions, the more power we have over them. It's the difference between drowning in a wave and learning to surf it. This practice isn't about suppressing emotions or making them disappear. It's about creating enough distance between you and the feeling so that you can respond instead of react. Imagine watching a storm roll in from a distance instead of being caught in the middle of it. When we name our emotions, we stop being trapped by them. We step outside of them just enough to regain our balance. And when we're steady, we make better choices. We show up as the person we want to be, not the person our stress turns us into. When something upsets us, our natural instinct is to react fast. Someone cuts us off in traffic, and before we know it, we're honking, throwing our hands up, maybe even shouting words we wouldn't say in front of our grandmother. Or a coworker sends a passive-aggressive email, and suddenly we're drafting a response that could set their inbox on fire. This happens because our brain is wired to protect us. When we feel attacked, physically, emotionally, or even just in our pride, our fight or flight response kicks in. But here's the catch. This survival mechanism, while useful when we're actually in danger, isn't so great when applied to everyday situations. A rude comment from a stranger or a frustrating encounter at work isn't the same as being chased by a lion. Yet our body reacts as if it is. But what if, instead of immediately reacting, we paused and got curious? What if we replaced assumptions with questions? Instead of thinking, this person is an idiot or they're trying to ruin my day, what if we asked, what else could be true here? Could that driver who cut you off be rushing to the hospital? Could that short, dismissive email be from someone who just got terrible news? Could the friend who canceled plans again be struggling with something they're not telling you? Curiosity shifts our focus from being right to understanding. And that shift is powerful because when we seek understanding, we calm our nervous system. We create space between the trigger and our response. Getting curious instead of furious doesn't mean excusing bad behavior. It doesn't mean letting people walk all over us or pretending that rude, careless actions don't hurt. It simply means that we choose not to let those moments control us. Because when we assume the worst about people, we make our own lives harder. We carry around unnecessary anger, resentment, and stress, all of which take a toll on our mental and physical health. But when we stay open to the possibility that there's more to the story, we prevent ourselves from spiraling into negativity. We shift from seeing others as enemies to seeing them as human, flawed, complicated, and sometimes just as overwhelmed as we are. The beauty of curiosity is that it leads to better relationships, stronger communication, and a greater sense of inner peace. When we ask questions instead of making assumptions, we invite connection instead of conflict. And more often than not, we realize that people's actions have little to do with us and everything to do with what they're going through. So the next time you feel your blood pressure rising over something someone said or did, take a deep breath and ask yourself, what else could be true? You might be surprised by the answer. We've all heard it before. Take a deep breath. And let's be honest, when we're in the middle of a stressful situation, being told to just breathe can feel dismissive, even frustrating. But here's the thing. Breathing isn't just some fluffy mindfulness trick. It's biology. It's neuroscience. It's one of the most powerful tools we have to calm our nervous system. And the best part, it's always available. We don't need a fancy app, a yoga mat, or a quiet room. Our breath is with us wherever we go, and when used intentionally, it can change the way we react to stress, anxiety, and overwhelm. When we experience stress, our body responds as if we're in danger. Our heart rate spikes, our muscles tense, and our breathing becomes shallow and rapid. This is part of the fight or flight response, a survival mechanism designed to help us escape threats. But here's the problem. Our brain doesn't always know the difference between real danger, like a bear chasing us, and perceived danger, like an overwhelming to-do list or a tense conversation with our boss. Our body reacts the same way to both. The good news, just as our breathing speeds up when we're stressed, we can intentionally slow it down to signal to our brain that we're safe. When we take slow, deep breaths, we activate the parasympathetic nervous system, our body's natural calming mechanism. This tells our heart rate to slow down, our muscles to relax, and our mind to regain clarity. One of the most effective breathing techniques is the 4 method, 4-A-4-A-4 method, also known as box breathing. Here's how it works. Inhale deeply through your nose for 4 counts, hold for 4 counts, exhale slowly through your mouth for 4 counts, and hold again for 4 counts, before repeating the cycle. This method is used by Navy SEALs and first responders because it helps them stay calm under extreme pressure. If it works for them in life or death situations, imagine what it can do for us in traffic, in a heated argument, or when we're feeling overwhelmed at work. The beauty of controlled breathing is that it shifts us from reacting impulsively to responding with intention. It buys us time, clarity, and emotional stability, all in just a few seconds. But like any skill, using breathwork effectively requires practice. If we only try to use deep breathing after we're already stressed, it won't feel natural. Instead, we need to train our bodies to use it as a default response to stress. That means practicing it daily, while waiting in line at the grocery store, before answering a difficult email, or even right before bed. The more we engage with our breath, the more accessible this tool becomes when we need it most. It's not about eliminating stress altogether. Life will always throw challenges our way. But when we learn to control our breath, we learn to control our response. And that shift, that's where real power lies. So much of our stress, frustration, and emotional turmoil comes from one simple but painful truth. We let other people dictate how we feel about ourselves. A passive-aggressive comment from a coworker ruins our entire day. A friend's silence makes us question whether we've done something wrong. A critical remark from a family member sits with us for years, shaping the way we see ourselves. It's exhausting. And yet we keep handing over the pen, letting other people write our story, define our worth, and determine our emotional state. But here's the hard truth. The moment we rely on others to validate our value, we give away our power. We become prisoners to their moods, opinions, and judgments, and that is no way to live. The reality is, people's reactions to us have far more to do with them than with us. Their words and behaviors are shaped by their own experiences, insecurities, and struggles. Think about it. Have you ever snapped at someone not because they did anything wrong, but because you were overwhelmed or upset about something completely unrelated? We all have. And yet, when the roles are reversed, we take things so personally. If someone is short with us, we assume they're angry at us. If they don't respond to a text, we tell ourselves they don't care. But what if their actions had nothing to do with us at all? What if they were just dealing with their own battles, just like we are? When we stop taking everything so personally, we free ourselves from so much unnecessary pain. Of course, this doesn't mean we should ignore genuine criticism or avoid difficult conversations. Growth requires feedback, and relationships require communication. But there's a difference between listening to others and letting them define us. Not everyone's opinion deserves a seat at the table of our self-worth. So before we internalize someone's words or actions, we need to ask ourselves, does this person truly understand me? Do they have my best interests at heart? Is their opinion based on facts, or is it just their own projection? When we step back and evaluate the source, we often realize that we've been giving far too much power to people who haven't earned it. At the end of the day, we are the only ones who get to decide how we see ourselves. We get to choose the narrative we believe. We get to decide whether we let other people's negativity control us, or whether we stand firm in our own truth. This doesn't happen overnight. It takes practice, self-awareness, and a willingness to let go of the need for external approval. But the more we remind ourselves that we are the authors of our own story, the more we reclaim our power. And when we do that, we step into a life that feels lighter, freer, and entirely our own. If we want to train our minds to stay calm in high-stress situations, we have to start by practicing in the small moments. The truth is, no one wakes up one day magically able to handle chaos, uncertainty, and conflict with perfect composure. Staying calm is a skill, just like learning a new language or building muscle at the gym. And like any skill, it requires repetition. If we only try to access inner calm when life is throwing its biggest storms at us, we're going to struggle. That's like expecting to run a marathon without ever having trained. The key is to practice staying calm in everyday moments. When we spill coffee on our shirt, when we're stuck behind a slow driver, when we misplace our phone. These minor frustrations might seem insignificant, but they are actually the perfect training ground for emotional resilience. The reason this works is because our nervous system doesn't distinguish between small stressors and big stressors as much as we think. It follows patterns. If we react with frustration every time something minor inconveniences us, we're reinforcing a habit of stress. On the other hand, if we can train ourselves to take a deep breath, pause, and respond calmly to small annoyances, we build the muscle memory needed to handle bigger challenges with the same level of composure. Think of it like weightlifting. You don't start by trying to bench press 300 pounds. You begin with lighter weights and gradually build strength over time. Emotional regulation works the same way. The more we practice staying calm in the small moments, the stronger our ability to manage stress in difficult situations becomes. One of the best ways to practice is by noticing our initial reactions and choosing a different response. For example, the next time we're waiting in a long line at the grocery store, instead of sighing loudly and feeling irritated, we can use the moment to take a deep breath and check in with ourselves. Instead of getting frustrated when we hit every red light on the way to work, we can use it as an opportunity to practice patience. And instead of snapping at a loved one for interrupting us, we can pause, recognize our irritation, and respond with kindness instead of reactivity. These small shifts might not seem like much in the moment, but over time they reshape our brain's default response to stress. The ultimate goal is not to eliminate frustration or difficult emotions altogether. That's impossible. The goal is to create enough space between a trigger and our response so that we can act with intention rather than impulse. When we train in the small moments, we build the resilience to stay grounded in the big ones. We stop being ruled by our emotions and start taking charge of our own peace. And the more we practice, the more natural it becomes. Calm stops being something we wish for, it becomes something we are. At the end of the day, staying calm in any situation isn't about suppressing emotions or pretending that life doesn't get messy. It's about learning how to navigate challenges with a sense of control, clarity, and resilience. It's about recognizing that while we can't always change what happens around us, we can change how we respond within us. The real power isn't in controlling the chaos, it's in not letting the chaos control us. Each of the tools we've talked about, naming our emotions, getting curious instead of furious, using breath work, reclaiming our own narrative, and practicing in the small moments, aren't just strategies for dealing with stress. They're ways of living that help us move through the world with more grace, more confidence, and more peace. And the best part, they're always available to us. We don't have to wait for life to slow down or for everything to be perfect before we practice them. We can start now, right where we are. The next time life throws something unexpected your way, and it will, pause, take a breath, ask yourself, how do I want to show up in this moment? Because that's what it all comes down to. We train our minds to stay calm so that no matter what happens, we can show up as the person we want to be, not the person stress, fear, or frustration tries to turn us into. So let's make a promise to ourselves today, not to be perfect, not to never feel stressed, but to take back our power, to respond instead of react, to lead with intention instead of impulse, to remind ourselves every single day that we have everything we need to face whatever comes our way. Calm isn't something we find, it's something we become.